Welcome to our channel. In this video, we delve into the remarkable yet turbulent life of Ida Lupino, a visionary actress and one of the first female directors in Hollywood's golden age. Born into a family of theatrical performers, Lupino inherited both talent and ambition. She quickly ascended to stardom with her memorable roles in intense dramas and groundbreaking work in film noir. However, behind the glitter and acclaim lay a much darker story of personal struggles and a career that slowly unraveled. Join us as we explore her meteoric rise to fame, her pioneering achievements in a male-dominated industry, and the heartbreaking twists that led to her tragic downfall. Ida Lupino was born on February 4, 1918 in London, into a family of performers. Her uncle and father were well-known figures in the English music hall scene. Her father, Stanley Lupino, was a renowned music hall performer, and her ancestry included actors, dancers, singers, puppeteers, and tightrope walkers. Growing up, Ida lived in a Tudor mansion in Streatham filled with theatrical memorabilia. She sang and performed with her family around the piano. When she was 8, her parents went on tour in the United States and on Broadway, leaving Ida and her sister at the Clarence House boarding school for girls in West Brighton. There, she developed her writing and acting skills, often writing plays in which she starred as the lead. As she grew older, she became a young woman of remarkable beauty, characterized by her alabaster skin and piercing blue eyes. To truly appreciate Ida Lupino's profound impact on Hollywood, it's crucial to understand the rich tapestry of her family's entertainment heritage. The English music hall tradition, in which her father, Stanley Lupino, and uncle were key figures, had been a source of mass cultural enjoyment in Britain from the mid-19th century through the early 20th century. Known for comedic sketches, variety acts, songs, and dances, music halls launched the careers of many iconic performers. Stanley Lupino himself was a beloved comedian, singer, and writer of the period. He nurtured his daughter's early interest in show business by exposing her to theatrical routines and comedic timing, elements that would later underpin her ability to navigate Hollywood's rigorous demands. Importantly, the friendship between the Lupino family and literary luminaries such as Charles Dickens and J.M. Barrie spoke to the Lupinos' broad cultural reach. This was not just a family dabbling on stage. These were people who moved comfortably in circles of major creative talents, bridging different kinds of performance and storytelling. Edward VII's remark referring to them as the royal family of grease paint underscored the significant admiration for the clan, hinting at their almost aristocratic status within the realm of entertainment. For young Ida, such an environment meant that performance was woven into her everyday life. It likely felt as natural to her as breathing, something that comes across when reading about how she sang with her family around the piano or performed impromptu sketches at home. In that Tudor mansion in Streatham, decorated with memorabilia, playbills, and possibly old costumes from the family's stage productions, Ida immersed herself in the artifacts of theatrical history. One can imagine the walls adorned with framed posters and photographs capturing the heyday of the music hall scene. Each piece of decor told a story of comedic triumphs, sold-out shows, or entertaining fiascos. For a child with a creative and curious mind, such an environment served as a perfect incubator for artistry. She was not just learning lines or songs. She was absorbing an entire family tradition dedicated to entertaining the masses. This immersion in performance culture was further nurtured when her parents, always on the move, left her at the boarding school in West Brighton. At Clarence House, her imaginative spark found new outlets. She wrote plays, devised dramatic scenarios, and even starred in them. displaying her leadership in the realm of performance from a young age. While many children her age might be timid about public speaking, Ida was already well-versed in stage presence. She apparently enjoyed taking center stage, shaping stories, and directing her peers. This interplay of creativity and confidence would later be critical in her transition from actress to director in Hollywood, a terrain then dominated by men. Beyond her family's immediate environment, the British entertainment scene of the early 20th century was undergoing significant change, moving toward more modern forms of theatrical expression in cinema. This larger cultural shift no doubt influenced Ida's imagination. Her father's robust career in comedic musicals, as well as her mother's on-stage experiences, served as living examples of how performing was not just a passion, it was a viable way of life. For some, that might be daunting, but for young Ida, it was an inspirational roadmap. Her remarkable beauty, so often noted by observers, could have easily made her just another starlet, known solely for her looks. However, the foundation of wit, resilience, and artistry she had built from her childhood was a crucial differentiator. When she eventually stepped onto Hollywood sets, she wasn't just a pretty face. She possessed an innate comedic sense, dramatic flair, and the hard-earned discipline from her family's theatrical tradition. This background made her a performer who could handle both comedic lines and deeply intense dramatic moments, something that set her apart from her contemporaries. It's also worth noting that the era in which she grew up, post-World War I and leading into the Great Depression, was rife with social and economic shifts on both sides of the Atlantic. This period saw changes in how audiences consumed entertainment, gravitating toward the escapism of cinema. The Lupino family, with its comedic musicals, offered this very brand of escapism. It's no wonder that Ida's mother and father felt the need to tour internationally, including their stints in the U.S. as the global appetite for performance was high. Ida's separation from her parents during these tours might have been emotionally challenging, yet it also seems to have cultivated in her a fierce independence and self-reliance, traits essential for anyone hoping to succeed in Hollywood's competitive environment. From the vantage point of modern viewers, Ida Lupino's early life reads almost like a fairy tale, a home filled with music, comedic scripts, visits from cultural icons, and the promise of a spotlight waiting just around the corner. But the seeds of her resilience, her willingness to fight for creative control, and her capacity to stand firm in a male-dominated industry were planted in these formative years. By the time she emerged as an actress, she had internalized the lesson that performance was a craft, one that demanded both physical stamina and emotional nuance. Some further context that deepens our appreciation of Ida's background. The British music hall tradition reached its apex in the late Victorian era and continued to evolve through the Edwardian period. Performers often had to master multiple skills: singing, dancing, comedic timing, and some measure of crowd work, especially when audiences could be rowdy. It was a training ground in improvisation and showmanship. Stanley Lupino, being a principal figure, would have impressed upon his daughter not just a love for performance, but also an understanding that the audience's favor is fleeting. A performer must constantly deliver something fresh. This heightened awareness of performance dynamics likely shaped Ida's own quest to break boundaries later in Hollywood. Ida Lupino's acting career began at a young age. She made her film debut as an extra in The Love Race, 1931, which starred her father and was directed by her cousin Lupino Lane. A German director visiting the set took notice of her beauty and offered her a role in his upcoming production. But her single scene was later cut because she was considered more attractive than the leading lady. Despite that early setback, Lupino prioritized her education and enrolled in the London Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. In her second term, she was cast in a production of Heartbreak House by the famous playwright George Bernard Shaw. After her studies, she returned to the film industry with a lead role in Alan Dwan's Her First Affair, 1932. This Lolita-type role had initially been pitched to her mother, but the 14-year-old Ida so impressed the director that he cast her instead. She bleached her hair for the film and was promoted as the English version of Jean Harlow. Nevertheless, she made relatively few films in Britain. Upon arriving at Paramount, her roles were limited. She appeared as the second female lead in 2 films, Peter Ibbotson, 1935, directed by Henry Hathaway, in which she was a potential love interest for Gary Cooper, and Anything Goes, 1936, directed by Louis Milestone, where she played a shipboard Chippy alongside Bing Crosby. In stepping from her family's musical and comedic traditions into film, Ida Lupino soon discovered both the rewards and pitfalls of cinema's casting system. Her earliest opportunity, an extra role in The Love Race, highlighted how her father's name could open doors, yet nepotism alone wouldn't guarantee stardom. The minor setback of having her scene cut by the German director due to outshining the leading actress was a harbinger of Hollywood's complicated relationship with beauty and star power. Even from her teenage years, Ida encountered a clash between the realities of the film industry's image-driven structure and her own ambition to be recognized for genuine talent. Importantly, instead of letting that early disappointment derail her aspirations, she resolved to hone her craft. The London Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, RADA, was then, as it is today, one of the most prestigious acting schools in the world. Enrollment there was no small feat. Students encountered rigorous training that included voice projection, movement, textual analysis, and scene study under the guidance of venerable instructors. By diving into the works of George Bernard Shaw, Shakespeare, and other major playwrights, Ida refined her ability to handle complex dialogue and emotive scenes, an education she would bring to bear on future Hollywood roles. RADA also fostered collaboration. It required actors to work cohesively, adjusting to different directors and co-stars. This environment might well have laid the groundwork for Ida's later directorial ventures, cultivating her sensitivity to ensemble dynamics and the necessity of guiding cast members effectively. Her first significant film role, in Her First Affair, put her teenage talents on display before a broader audience. That she was cast instead of her mother reveals both her youthful charisma and the entertainment industry's insatiable search for fresh faces. Bleaching her hair to become the English Jean Harlow signaled how studios often sought to mold an actress into a bankable type, whether as an ingenue, a vamp, or a comedic foil. For Lupino, playing a Lolita-type character might have been a quick route to recognition, but it also risked pigeonholing her as a mere glamorous prop. Yet she navigated this precarious line with caution, ensuring her performance remained memorable enough to attract more offers, even if it did not immediately skyrocket her to the top in the British film scene. The subsequent move to Paramount introduced Lupino to the more entrenched Hollywood studio system, known for grooming female stars like Claudette Colbert, Marlene Dietrich, and Carole Lombard. Securing roles in Peter Ibbotson and Anything Goes meant rubbing shoulders with major Hollywood names. Working alongside a seasoned star such as Gary Cooper in Peter Ibbotson must have been both daunting and exhilarating. In big studio pictures, a second female lead had limited screen time and typically served to highlight the leading man or the primary heroine. This was a double-edged sword. It might confine an actress's range, yet it could also provide an opportunity to stand out if she brought enough nuance and magnetism. In Anything Goes, directed by Louis Milestone, she was cast in a comedic, slightly risque capacity. An apt fit, perhaps, given her background in musical and comedy family traditions. Appearing alongside Bing Crosby, one of the era's top crooners and film stars, gave her exposure to mainstream American audiences. However, these roles, while valuable for building her resume, did not position her as a leading lady or demonstrate the full breadth of her talent. Hollywood's star machine often demanded that actresses adhere to certain images: blonde bombshell, sultry brunette, wholesome girl next door. Ida's strong personality and interest in more complex material, combined with the lingering influences of her stage background, meant she was never entirely comfortable settling into a single mold. It is also worth examining the broader social and cultural context of Hollywood during this period. The mid-1930s saw the enforcement of the production code, often referred to as the Hays Code, which regulated the moral content of films. Certain roles, such as shipboard Chippy, were typically sanitized or played up for comedic relief, ensuring that any sensual or scandalous dimension adhered to code restrictions. This environment could limit the dramatic possibilities for an actress, especially one with a deeper interest in exploring morally gray territory. For Lupino, whose early training included serious dramatic works, such coded restrictions may have been a source of frustration, prompting her to seek out more challenging scripts later in her career. Another dimension that shaped Ida's early career choices was the deepening of the Great Depression in the United States. Actors and filmmakers recognized that audiences increasingly turned to the movies for escapism, whether in the form of musicals, screwball comedies, or lavish romances. For an ambitious performer like Ida, there was always a balancing act between taking roles that paid the bills and waiting for the part that truly showcased her talents. This tension likely spurred her to look for projects beyond just comedic or superficial parts, hinting at why she later gravitated toward darker, more intense dramas. Many British performers, including legendary figures like Charles Laughton, Vivien Leigh, and Alfred Lunt, found themselves drawn to the United States to pursue bigger projects and more lucrative contracts. Ida's decision to seek success at Paramount thus aligned with this broader trend of British actors crossing the Atlantic. She wasn't merely following an impulse, but part of a wave of transatlantic talent that shaped the golden age of Hollywood. Although she began in somewhat marginal roles and was occasionally overshadowed or cut from scenes, she used these experiences to refine her craft. She sought mentors, paid attention to the intricacies of studio politics, and learned how different directors approach their craft. In the process, she acquired knowledge that would be crucial when she eventually sat in the director's chair, an evolution that many of her contemporaries never attempted. Lupino's big break came when she won the role of a fiery Cockney model in The Light That Failed, 1936. Directed by William Wellman. She outshone Vivien Leigh for the part and starred opposite Ronald Colman, gaining significant public attention. Soon after, she signed a contract with Warner Brothers and received critical acclaim for her performances. In They Drive By Night, 1940, directed by Raoul Walsh, Lupino portrayed the cunning wife of a trucking magnate, stealing the spotlight from both George Raft and Humphrey Bogart. Over the following years, her reputation grew through dark dramas that foreshadowed post-war film noir thrillers. She starred in Moontide, 1942, directed by Archie Mayo, alongside John Gabin, and Deep Valley, 1947, directed by John Negulesco, with Dane Clark. These roles firmly established her status as a talented actress in Hollywood. By 1947, Lupino sought greater control and left Warner Brothers after starring in the intense film Noir Roadhouse. Determined to bolster her standing in the industry, she ventured into producing. Alongside her second husband, Columbia production executive Collier Young, she invested in the independent crime drama Not Wanted. When Elmer Clifton, the director of Not Wanted, suffered a heart attack during pre-production, Lupino stepped in and directed from the very first day, even though she was not a member of the Directors Guild of America. To help Clifton save face, she downplayed her role publicly and credited the ailing Clifton instead. She shot the film guerrilla style on the streets of Los Angeles to cut costs on set building. Budgeted at just over $150,000, Not Wanted grossed over $1 million. News of Lupino's adept direction spread quickly, and even A-list actresses requested private screenings. In a male-dominated Hollywood, her success was groundbreaking, demonstrating that women could lead productions as effectively as men. Ida Lupino soon became known for her distinctive touch in film noir. She and Collier Young founded an independent production company, and her reputation as both a filmmaker and a television director soared by the 1960s. She directed several films and over 100 television episodes, consistently challenging the male hierarchy in Hollywood. After splitting from Young in 1951, Lupino found comfort with actor Howard Duff, whom she would spend the next 30 years with. She earned a reputation for her bold, direct, and sometimes masculine directing style, a defiance of conventional patriarchal norms. Her last opportunity to direct a feature film was the comedic school movie The Trouble with Angels, 1966, featuring Haley Mills as a mischievous convent student and Rosalind Russell as the strict headmistress. Throughout her career, Ida Lupino faced challenges with addiction and declining health. She wrestled with alcohol and drug issues, which negatively affected both her career and personal life. By the 1960s, these struggles contributed to her becoming a recluse and making poor business decisions. Her third marriage to Howard Duff was tumultuous and eventually ended in divorce after a long separation. A particularly sad moment occurred at the 1972 Academy Awards, where Lupino had been invited to present an award. Bob Finkel, the show's producer, found her intoxicated upon arrival and, fearing a public debacle, locked her in a broom closet. She was forgotten there until the end of the broadcast and was still asleep when retrieved. This humiliating incident underscored the unfortunate decline of a once illustrious figure in Hollywood. Ida Lupino's personal struggles stand in stark contrast to the professional breakthroughs she achieved. On set, she was a dynamo, fiercely in control, efficient, and talented at drawing out nuanced performances. Off-set, however, she grappled with demons that gradually eroded her physical and mental health. The demands of Hollywood fame, especially for a woman who constantly had to prove her worth in a male-dominated industry, were immense. Add to that the stress of juggling acting, directing, producing, and writing, and it becomes clear how vulnerable she was to burnout. The swirl of parties, late-night gatherings, and social networking that characterized mid-century Hollywood could be both glamorous and destructive. Ida, whose persistent sense of independence had once been an asset, found herself isolated in her struggles. Alcohol and prescription drugs were common salves for the era's pressures. Studios themselves sometimes furnished pills to help actresses manage weight, anxiety, or exhaustion. Over time, these substances took their toll, fueling erratic behavior and deepening her sense of loneliness. The 1960s marked a cultural sea change in the film industry. Younger directors and a new generation of starlets emerged, often overshadowing veterans from the golden age. While Ida continued to direct for television and occasionally appeared in films, her earlier star status waned. This decline was also interwoven with her personal life. Her marriage to Howard Duff, which initially offered companionship and emotional support, became a source of turmoil. The classic Hollywood gossip circuit whispered about volatile arguments, infidelity, and heavy drinking. Whether these rumors were exaggerated or entirely factual, the marriage eventually crumbled under the strain of addiction, personal disagreements, and Ida's deteriorating health. The 1972 Academy Awards incident was a stark public manifestation of her struggles. Invited to present an award, a gesture likely meant to honor her contributions, she arrived intoxicated, prompting producer Bob Finkel to lock her in a broom closet to avoid a scene. The fact that she was forgotten there until after the ceremony ended is both tragic and symbolic of Hollywood's tendency to discard once beloved stars who have fallen from grace. Lupino, once hailed as a groundbreaking talent, was literally and figuratively shoved out of the spotlight. In an industry that thrives on image and glamour, such a humiliating moment could be devastating. Social context is again relevant here. During the 1970s, conversations about substance abuse and mental health were not as open or compassionate as they might be today. Stars who faced these issues often did so in secrecy or were shamed publicly. Rehabilitation programs existed, but did not carry the widespread acceptance or comprehensive care they have in modern times. Consequently, Ida's battles with addiction played out against a backdrop of stigmatization, limiting her support system and deepening her isolation. Her reclusiveness toward the latter part of the 1960s and into the 1970s hints at a woman who felt cornered by her own legacy. For many female directors and actresses of her generation, there was no blueprint for gracefully winding down a once flourishing career. Roles for older women were scarce. Directorial opportunities for women were still minimal. And the unrelenting gossip machine of Hollywood took a toll on personal dignity. The sense of heartbreak in her later years is palpable, not just because she was overshadowed by new talents, but because the industry she helped pioneer seemed all too ready to forget her once she was no longer at her peak. Despite Lupino's many achievements as an actress and one of the first female directors in film and television, her contributions went largely unrecognized during her lifetime. After her divorce from Howard Duff in 1984, she moved from the fashionable Brentwood area to the more affordable San Fernando Valley. Increasingly isolated, she battled alcoholism, depression, and other health issues. She became estranged from her daughter and withdrew from public life. Ida Lupino's final years were marked by significant health problems and mental decline. She was eventually diagnosed with cancer and suffered a fatal stroke in 1995, passing away in her Burbank home on August 3rd of that year at the age of 77. Though she spent her later years in relative obscurity, she was deeply loved by many and left an indelible mark on the film and television industries. It remains a profound regret that such a trailblazing artist was never fully honored for her groundbreaking work and talent in her own time. Ida Lupino's journey is a haunting reminder of how even the brightest stars can fade from memory. Despite her trailblazing accomplishments in front of and behind the camera, the final chapters of her life were marked by isolation, health issues, and a heartbreaking lack of recognition. Yet her influence on cinematic storytelling endures, and her courage in challenging traditional Hollywood norms still resonates. As we reflect on Ida Lupino's life and legacy, let us honor her pioneering spirit and ensure that her extraordinary contributions to film history are never forgotten. The fact that she directed multiple feature films at a time when women were largely relegated to the front of the camera set a bold precedent. In television, she proved that a female director could excel in diverse genres, from westerns to suspense anthologies, often delivering episodes that remain fan favorites even decades later. Her thematic interests in social issues, including illegitimacy and abuse, foreshadowed the more openly provocative themes tackled by later filmmakers. In many ways, she was an early example of an auteur, a filmmaker whose thematic and stylistic signatures could be traced across her body of work. Her overshadowed status in Hollywood's official histories is slowly being rectified. Modern film scholars and cinephiles are reevaluating her films, screening them at retrospectives and festivals dedicated to reintroducing audiences to the lesser-known pioneers of cinema. The label trailblazing has been rightfully applied to Lupino more in the 21st century than perhaps during her lifetime. Publications and academic works focus on her not just as a novelty, a female director in a male world, but as an authentic creative force whose insights into human psychology, moral ambiguity, and social constraints still ring true. While her reclusiveness, health problems, and diminishing career opportunities in her later years left her largely out of the public eye, there remained a cadre of devoted fans and friends who recognized the magnitude of her achievements. Within certain television circles, she was acknowledged as one of the most reliable and visionary directors around. This recognition, though smaller in scale than that accorded to some of her contemporaries, kept the spark of her reputation alive. The fact that her memory has not been entirely lost, but instead reborn in the scholarship and fandom of later generations is a tribute to the enduring quality of her work. That's the content of today's video. If you enjoy the video, give us a like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to receive more of our new videos. Thanks for watching.